Welcome back to Doc Morgan's Metal Reviews. I'm Doc Morgan, and today we are looking at DEE SNIDER's For the Love of Metal. Okay, so for those of you not familiar, which should be a very small minority, DEE SNIDER is one of those granddaddy icons of the rock and roll world, most well known for fronting the household name Twisted Sister, which were always a very Judas Priest-y, Kiss-style band, which were big in the late 70s, early 80s. You know what? Ask your parents. They'll know who I'm talking about. After Stay Hungry, their most famous album, they just kind of trailed off with a couple of lukewarm releases. But DEE SNIDER obviously never got the memo, and he's had his fingers in so many pies over the years, from solo albums, another band or two on the go, hosting radio shows, directing. The fucker even released an album called DEE Does Broadway. This man just doesn't stop. Now, this album, funny enough, came about as a kind of a dare from Jeremy Jasta, lead singer of Hatebreed, who had DEE on his podcast and essentially challenged him to make a heavy metal album. One thing led to another, and Jamie got a few buddies of his together and they wrote music and lyric. At the end of the road, we got this album. So yeah, just in case you're not picking up on it yet, to call this a DEE SNIDER project is actually quite deceptive, but it was written specifically with DEE in mind. So although this is a very modern sounding metal album, it does have this very classic metal feel that isn't purely by virtue of DEE's presence. The production is so clean, and this is without a doubt the most metal thing DEE SNIDER has done. I mean, that's why it's on my fucking radar. DEE SNIDER doing a pure metal album. I thought to myself, I have gotta hear this. Overall, this is a really fun album to listen to for metal fans. It never gets too heavy, it's really accessible for non-metal heads, and displays a nice variation of styles, which is no surprise since this album contains offerings and cameos from Howard Jones, formerly of Killswitch Engage, Mark Morton of Lamb of God, Alyssa White-Glutz, I have no idea how to pronounce her name, but she's from Arch Enemy, Charlie Belmore from Kingdom of Sorrow, and Joel Grind and Nick Belmore of Toxic Holocaust. There's definitely a comparison to be made with Judas Priest's Rob Halford, who of course did his own solo stuff, and this release from DEE has the very same Rob Halford, Judas Priest-y attitude running in its veins. The whole album has this energy to it. Each song is a driving force. When I saw the tracklist of 12 tunes, I will admit I was a bit apprehensive. I thought, well, okay, stick the kettle on, get the coffee going, this could be a while. And yet, no, none of these songs are too long. It's all very much wham bam, thank you ma'am, and before you know it, you're on the final titular track. A lot of this is what I would call pop metal, relatively generic, easy listening metal. It's the type of album you'd stick on in the car to fulfill that little headbanging need, while also keeping your aunt in the passenger seat happy. So some of the more standout tracks for me include I Am the Hurricane, which has this really slick, groovy riff and down-tempo atmospheric chorus. I saw the next song of the album was called American Made, and I was sort of expecting a sort of anthem, so to speak, and I was not disappointed. It's a really fun to listen to, no-nonsense track. Running Mazes takes things a little heavier, has this cool, overdubbed, atmospheric, hypnotizing kind of chorus, before bringing us to my favourite track, Mask. And you can hear the Lamb of God influence with this driving, proggy style riff. It just sounds straight out of a Lamb of God track. I said earlier there's a few features on this album, and one of them involves ex-Killswitch vocalist Howard Jones on The Hardest Way. And as much as I love Jones's vocals, I just don't think they suited this song. He sounds parachuted into the tune and a little out of place. It's not a bad song, but it's definitely the weakest on the album, in my humble opinion. Alyssa White-Glutz of Arch Enemy lends her vocals with some clean singing on Dead Hearts, and this is a much more cohesive track that opens with this almost Renaissance fair, folky opening, before DEE comes in, bringing the heavy with him. I mean, it's the closest thing we've got to a ballad on this album, without actually being one. The album then wraps up with the titular For the Love of Metal, which is a kind of not so serious send-up and tribute of the genre, with lyrics referencing releases by Dio, Judas Priest, and even SNIDER's own Twisted Sister, all in the first verse. Is it cringy? No, only if you take it seriously. I said earlier this is a very easy to listen to album, and if I'm gonna be honest, that is where it falls down. The album is like it was made with the most common denominators to appeal to as many metal fans as possible, without taking any risks, and what you're left with is this watered down, generic release where every song almost sounds the same, and only one song being a bit longer than 4 minutes, and fucking barely at that. As I said, It's pop metal. All in all, I really enjoyed this album. I don't want to sound too negative, but I enjoyed it in the same way that people enjoy Ed Sheeran or Taylor Swift. It's designed to appeal to as many people as possible. For the record, I am quite a big Taylor Swift fan. Don't like it? Fuck you. It's really just a fun album, but it isn't going to feature in any metal best of awards or whatever. 5.5 out of 10, maybe a 6, maybe. I'll see you next time, guys. Good luck.